Yo, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. I got a request from one of my subscribers, Kerry Rogers, and he brought up a good point. He was texting me, and he's asking about his PCV valve on his Hyundai Tucson 2018 model, and he came up with some very good points about not being able to find information on when to change them. And so I logged into All Data and got his VIN number and everything, and I looked at the service history, not the service history, but the service recommendations, and all it says is every 6,000 miles to check it. And I find that kind of weird because PCV valves are kind of important. And I'm going to go over that with you right now. I made some notes because PCV actually does a lot. There's a black cat walking around over there. So what is a PCV? Well, PCV, it's a positive crank ventilation. What does it do? It does a couple of different things actually, and they're very important. And I'll even go over where it came from and an actual fact that I found very interesting as well, and I think you'll find very interesting as well. So what does it do? And that was lightning. It's getting ready to lightning here. Got a pretty bad storm coming in. It was primarily developed to reduce emissions, but it also doubles as a mechanism to reduce the crankcase pressure. The crankcase being where the crankshaft and pistons and all that stuff is. It builds up pressure when you're driving. It allows the cleaner exhaust, prevents blow-by, and blow-by at the seals and gaskets, and it removes crankcase gases generated by the combustion process. Air fuel mixture goes in, piston comes up, spark plug fires, gases are created, goes out the exhaust. That builds up pressure. It's got to go somewhere. So, if you leave it unattended and you don't ever check it and it gets clogged up, it can build up sludge, destroy an engine if it's left unattended. It allows the engine to run efficiently, and it also creates better gas mileage because it is taking those vapors and pressure, and it's rerouting it basically to the intake. So basically, where did it come from? How did the idea come about? The idea came about actually, it's not a new feature on vehicles. They've been around for a while. When they became more widespread and over a century ago. Sorry, my wife was at the door. When automobiles became more widespread over a century ago, they found that automobiles leak oil. They all will at some point. And to stop the leaks, that's when gaskets and seals were created. But gaskets and seals weren't expected to stop the leak completely. So that's kind of where they came in with the PCV system, and eventually discovering using a downdraft tube. The case pressure was then ventilated, utilizing the airflow created by a moving vehicle, which is pretty interesting. To prevent vacuum from developing and separate crankcase breather. What? A separate crankcase breather was used. Basically, to prevent vacuum, they used a separate breather. The breather just allowed fresh air to enter as can't read my chicken scratch, I'm sorry. It allowed fresh air to enter and gases and pressure to ventilate outward. Basically, it was way back in the day, it was ventilated in the atmosphere. They don't do that anymore. It circulates back into the system. Here's a fun fact. I found this very interesting. In World War II, PCV systems were developed to allow engines to run underwater. Tanks couldn't use a downdraft tube because the engine would fill up with water. The PCV allowed a closed system that drew fresh air through the intake breather and allowed crankcase pressure to be pulled into the intake. In early 1960s, it was applied to automobiles. So that's pretty cool how they use that on tanks to be able to go underwater because they get submerged. You know, still allows them to run. You broke down in the water, man, you're screwed. So how does it work? Basically, there's two types of them. There's check valve and there's plunger type, and carry on yours as a plunger type. It regulates how much vacuum can pull through the crankcase. It's hooked into the intake. When the vacuum is high at idle, the PCV stops most of that vacuum. Okay? As the vacuum drops, because when you push the throttle, you don't have any more vacuum anymore. So you push the throttle, RPMs go up, you lose vacuum. The PCV opens to allow higher volume of gases and pressure to be pulled into the intake, basically recirculating it. It goes into the combustion chamber to be burned with everything else. Pretty simple. Vacuum disappears, it actually draws it in, recirculates it in the combustion chamber to be burned, and the process starts all over again. What can go wrong if you don't check them or replace them if you have a faulty one? If neglected, PCV will cause condensation in the oil that leads to blocked passages, damaged bearings, excessive oil consumption, that's a big one, pressure buildup that leads to seal blowout, and oil leaks, and also carbon buildup in the intake. So, when should you change it? All right, I'm going to recommend you check it at every oil change. Have it replaced at every major service, which is about 30,000 miles. So every 30,000 miles, you should have it replaced, whether it's working fine or not. It is a very inexpensive part. It is cheap, and it'll save you a lot of hassle in the long run. Keep your oil changed and your fluids checked and your tires rotated. Basically, keep up on your maintenance, okay? So yeah, and like Kerry said, every 6,000 miles, you're supposed to check it. And if it's good, leave it alone. But me and him were talking, and some of the people that had the same vehicle he does was having problems with him at 15,000 miles. So what does that tell you? Just because one's working doesn't mean the other one's going to work. So every oil change, have the mechanic check the PCV valve. And the way you check it on the plunger type is when you take it out on the threaded end, you put a rod in there and push to make sure the plunger is moving. That's it. On the check ball type, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can blow through one end, or you can sit there and shake it. You should hear it rattling around. That means it's moving freely. So with that being said, I hope you learned a little bit about PCV valves. Very inexpensive part to change out, and it will save you thousands of dollars, because if it is clogged up and you got all this blow by going on, it's going to cause major problems and some major engine repair, just because you have a little piece that cost about $6 that you didn't want to replace. So with that, I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next one.